Hey guys, just Mike here. Don't forget to subscribe because it's free. And give me a good thumbs up if you happen to appreciate this video. Anyway, today I have a Linden clock to work on. And what is the quality of Lindens? I don't really know. They seem to work. You can get them for a really cheap price, normally. And this is an unusual clock in my opinion. It's that close of being a cuckoo clock, but it doesn't cuckoo. Let me show you what I got. So here's the clock. It does say Linden 8-day. And now you look at this clock and it looks like a cheap, let's change the word from the A to a B-U-T-T clock. Just a normal clock. That's how GW sold this. The deal is, so it's hiding behind here. You notice it's got a hinge. They didn't even show this on the Goodwill site. There's a man in there, and he's got a hammer that hits on here when this thing's activated. But I do notice there's a piece missing here on the door to pop the door open when it needs to. So we're going to have to check in on that. Comes with a long pendulum, and it did come with both the, we'll call them the brass weights, just a shell that's brass obviously, and of course they just threw the chain in, which doesn't make a difference. You just have to untangle it, no big deal. And on the back here it's showing the two tunes there. So it's a what we'll call a bim bam clock, and in here is where the action is done. Look at that, they even packed it quite well inside here so it doesn't make any noise as it's being shipped. See if we can get this thing out of here. There we go. So everything looks good. This does have a keeper in here. Let's see if I can get you a little closer here. Now you notice there's a, we'll say a stop here, so this is only allowed to tick just so far one way. There we go. Just so far one way and so far another. And you can see that's actually got a pretty big swing for that long pendulum. So this plate here doesn't make any difference. And I don't know if this has got a slip clutch in it. We won't know until we get clear inside. So you can see as this is swinging back rated gong. So that's the neat part about this, is the man standing here hammering on a piece of metal. So whether it could be a horseshoe or whatever, it's just the idea of, I do believe they call him the blacksmith in there, showing off the gong, and so you do have action in the clock. So that's why I say this clock, only $16. I think I did pretty well there when it comes to that. So looking back inside again, there's a wire right here that is attached to the gongs, and I'm going to have to open up the back of this to see if the piece is there that opens the door in the front. Take it off, and right here is the part that opens the door, and I don't know if I'm going to have to glue that back on, or because that is a little bit of a rivet, and that's a flimsy aluminum, I guess we'll call it, door, and so there's not too much you want to do to that to damage it. But you can see the, let's flick this again. Maybe get you closer. So pulling back the gong, you can see how it moves it up and down. So to make this easier to take out, I had to take the gong rods, the gong rods out because they're crossing across the movement. And it helps to have a long screwdriver because you have to put it through where the chain is to reach clear in here to get both those screws out. And I'm not going to tear this pendulum up, so I'm going to go ahead and take this taper pin out. I already have it unscrewed, the movement unscrewed from the clock box itself. Got the taper pin. And this should come right out now. It's still in good shape. Okay, because I can't get the chain out, but I have the end off. Now to try to lift this up a little bit. I don't know if it's possible because you do have this rod here that holds the, or opens the door to the, let the man show. There we go. Now, if this wasn't connected, or if this was connected to the door, I'd have to undo this pin also. So I already took my best friend pictures of all of this so I could get it back like it's supposed to be. I took pictures all the way around, and I tried to make sure this was down when I took the pictures, because when I'm putting it back together again, this is the way it's going to be, and it might mess you up thinking about it when you're trying to put this thing back together again. So I want to take this off because it's in the way, and it has a small E-clip in here, so we're going to pull that out of there. And you notice this here is what causes this thing to move on the star wheel that's in there. So we got that off. Let's go ahead and take the pendulum off. Now this pendulum is a slip clutch pendulum, but you're only limited just so far of where it's going to tick. The way you're going to have to set this up is if it's not ticking right, you're going to have to hold on to this in order to just push it down, move it a little bit, and then listen to it. And if it's not working that way, you're going to have to kind of hold this thing up the best you can and give it a push, because that plate right here is in the way, and it does have this here portion that's stopping you from moving it too far or stopping the pendulum from swinging too much. So on here, I'm not going to deal with leaving this on here, so I'm just going to go ahead and take it off. 90% of the time I have to. Be careful with these because you don't want to break them off. You do, you might be in a world of hurt. Now these are really squeezed in, let's call it tight. On Cuckoo Clocks I don't see it that tight, but these here are really in there. Here, let me taking a fatter screwdriver that fits in there and twisting it up, because I can't get a screwdriver in there. I think I might now. Normally that's what you do, is you put a screwdriver in and pry back and forth. This here is really, really tight. So I get the one out, the other one pops back in. and the spring is just hanging around. It's off there now. There, we got the whole thing out. And luckily this is still in place. Now hopefully you got pictures of this area here, because getting the arm that opens the door, it's going to have to be on the proper side of this peg here. So on this, we're going to take the E-clip out of there and out of there. This here, well, once we get down to it, I'll show you. Now my blue screwdrivers don't have any magnetism. I should magnetize them, but I haven't. See, we can get this out of here now. This whole thing is plastic, whole snail. And it looks like it's in good shape. All the teeth are there. I don't see a crack in it. And then you have this plastic gear. I do not like plastic gears, I tell you. It's all in good shape. All the teeth look good in it. Let's go ahead and undo this one now. I'm using the blue screwdrivers. It has a nice fine tip in it. And usually these E-clips have got a little hole in them. And this just happens to get where it needs to go, compared to this screwdriver is a little bit fatter to catch these E-clips. Personally, if I was the company, I'd be embarrassed putting that small of an E-clip on there, unless you had to. But there's the part that counts how many, what the hour is. Of course, as hopefully you all know, the snail tells that part what hour it is. Let's go ahead and take this part of the pendulum off. We don't want to damage it, but that way I can show you also the slip clutch on it. In which this is adjustable. That's why they have these oblong holes on it. There's the part that's not allowing the pendulum to swing any more than necessary. This round disc here is what's going to show you that it is a slip clutch. And right now it is really in there. I'm not going to mess with it because it should be on right. But they've got that really pressed on in, and so it's not happy to move right now. That's fine with me as long as this thing's ticking right. Otherwise I might have, once I get back together again, if that ticking's off, I'm going to have to work on this to loosen it up. This is a magnetic screwdriver. And technically speaking, who knows where that clip went. And that's why it's a good thing to have some extra on hand. It's either stuck on the clock or it went to no man's land. And so this one has a spring on it to keep it pushed up. That spring is here, and it's got the E-clip on top, and then the spring's going to come out. Okay, spring went flying, so I have to find that because that's what's going to hold this gear, or not gear, this lever out. So before I go any further, let me find it. So here it is. I don't know where it was, but let me tell you what. This comes in handy. A magnet that extends, so that way you don't have to bend on the floor, be on your hands and knees. And if you are on your hands and knees, that's okay too. I'm finding all pieces of little metal and everything else. And I'd suggest if you're doing a lot of clocks, as long as it's not brass, maybe you need one of these. Finds E-clips and springs great. So on this movement, it has this here, and I'm not sure what that thing does. It looks like it has a piece that broke off right here, like it was a lever, and you look inside, there's nothing that it goes to. So let's call it down the road. We're going to have to find out if there is something supposed to be hooked on here. Oh, there's our E-clip. So for the heck of it, there's the screw. Here's the keeper to hold it in place, I guess we'll call it. And then here's the broke off, who knows what that goes to. Lots of oil underneath here, excessive actually. So we're going to go ahead and clean those too, just because it's part of the clock, but I have a feeling it's not going to anything yet. And as long as the clock gongs, that's fantastic. Now let me rub this a little bit. I don't know if you guys can see this or not. So I do believe it says Cuckoo Clock Manufacturing Company Incorporated, no jewels, unadjustable. That's all I got on the back of this clock that I can see. I don't see any numbers on here or anything else. So that just tells you this Linden has a Cuckoo Clock manufacturer movement in it. Inside here you can see the star wheel that's operating the rod, the hammers for the gong. Now let's see if we can get this thing apart and keep the gears all in their place in order to show you a better picture of how they go together. So besides a little bit of, we'll call it corrosion, that's not going to come off, and I don't want to leave these plates in too long. Like I say, they do have a finish over them to make them shiny when they are clean, but technically speaking, who cares? You're not going to see the movement. So anyway, here's what our movement looks like. Let's get a little closer. So that's what it looks like. Now would be a good time to take a picture of what you see here, so it's a lot easier to get this thing back together again. Now I do notice again, which this might be a newer clock, although I've already had two of these. I don't remember if they had them or not, but here's a plastic gear. There's a plastic on top of this, on this gear. There's a plastic one right here. And this here is plastic. Grr. So let's take this thing apart. We're going to do the gong side first. On your fan, it's holding, but not very well. I mean, it doesn't spin real fast, but I would think that should hold a little bit better. It depends on the speed, and being how it's going to take more weight to get the hammers to run, this is probably just fine. I won't know until I actually get this thing together. Can we pull that one off? Yep. That beefy gear. Of course, that beefy gear is going with the winder. In my opinion, it's got the better winder because it has the actual clicker in there. There, you can see it now. Instead of a stupid disc, I guess we'll say. Because this is an 8-day is maybe why it has a beefier clicker in it. But it is holding. We can't take this one out because this is hooked up to, as Mark calls it, the Pac-Man part, and that's the part of the timing that will, well, besides move however many it has to count for hours, it needs to be parked in a proper space. So this here's plastic. Then we have this one here, which has another rod, little wire rod back here. That's going to be some of your timing that you're going to have to pay attention to as this is swinging around. And you might have to separate the clock, the plates, in order to pull the gear away from here and spin it around because you're timing it with this pin here and where it needs to hit onto the levers. So besides that one, you have, counting the fan, you got 4 pieces there. That one's the 5th one. Now your time side, so that there's plastic down here. I don't see any cracks in it. Considering there's no rust really, I don't see. It's just kind of really over oiled. Down the bottom here, that never touches anything. It's darkened, so whether that, I don't think it's rust, it's too oily. I think what that is just old oil building up on there. Again, the plastic gear. And I've never had to order one or try to fix one, but this one says number 7 on it. Here's the winder. And it locks good. See that, what we'll call rust. Now whether this clock was just over oiled or what, but I'm sure that's just old oil buildup on there. But again, when you put these clocks together, especially if they're fine pins like this, you need to be careful putting them together because those will bend very easily. And this one's not going to come out because that's part of the time. And again, there's more plastic. But by the looks of it, it's holding in there. Doesn't mean this is plastic. Even though I don't like it, it's cheap. It's doing its job, so that's the main thing there. We're ready to put all this into a basket, into the cleaner. And these plates I'm not going to leave in as long because, like I say, in fact, it looks like it's been coming off possibly. Whether this clock was clean before or not, I don't know. But if that lacquer comes off of here, I'm not really concerned. It's usually on your newer movements. to keep them shiny in case someone happens to look inside, or maybe that's a selling point when they sell the clocks. But realistically, I don't care. So I have all my parts clean, washed in their clean clock cleaner, washed with dishwashing soap and scrubbed them with a toothbrush, and I used a toothpick in every one of these holes here. I did it on the front side and the back side, just for the bling of everything. I did it. I went ahead and shined this plate up a little bit with the brass cleaner. I didn't do it to this one, and that's because this one here is for show, and to show you, you can do it if you want to. It's not necessary. But on this one here, you can see the stains and everything. All that would come out if you wanted to do your plate all the way. So let me get the feet hooked up to this part here again so we can put this thing back together again. So now that I'm ready and using my pitcher, let's put this thing together. So now that we know everything's turning in here, let's go ahead and oil this thing up before you start putting any more levers on here, because once you start adding them, as you can see, there's a lot of them that are really close to these and they're hard to get to. Just put a drop on there. You get too much, take a tissue and dab it to get the excess off. So this needs to drop down right in the center of that. Like I say, Mark calls that a Pac-Man. So this here gear with the warning pin on it needs to be pulled away from this gear here. So I need to separate the plate, pull this out, and lift it up so it's not on there. And then I need to move that pin now. I have it adjusted to where this is in the center where I want it. I need to move this gear with the warning pin on it back to hit this here lever. So of course this is going to fall out. I don't care. We'll maybe move it out of the way. I'm away from, I was. Nope, I hit it again. So now, trigger this. And it's actually passed just a little bit. Let's see if that's going to be okay when I turn the hand. The reason why you don't want the spring on this side, because you're not pushing it up like it's doing now. When it's on this side where it's supposed to be, it's pulling it down. So put this back in the way it's supposed to be. Put the spring on this side where it's supposed to be. And now we'll reinstall this E-clip. If I can catch it with my pliers. So now, let's see, where is it? There it is. Throw that on there. Throw this on here. And throw this on here. And this here is awful loose, as in it's dragging on the gear a little bit. But it's up where it's supposed to be. So let's just give it a little bend away from the gear. You don't want too far. So right now this here isn't rattling on that gear. We are counting. The half hour is coming up. There's the half hour. Coming to the 12. You kind of ask, why is this important? Because this here needs to come up and clear this and not be close to it. So that way each one of these are gonna, we'll call it, ring at the proper time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Come to the half hours. You want to check that? Which the half hour does not fall. It just lifts a little bit so it knows it's a half hour. And then come back to the hour, we have the 1 o'clock. There we go. I'm happy with that. Okay, I got this back in. It's not sitting all the way down because the actual spot is up here. And the same with this one, there's an actual spot there instead of being all the way down. And moves just fine. You notice this peg where it's sitting, it's right where it's supposed to be. And this is going, let me pull the camera back a little bit. So this here is going straight across and it pushes out. The reason why it pushes out is because it's got to open that door. So now to get this gong installed, because I don't even know if that's right for when this is supposed to hit. And actually it looks pretty good. We're going to find out, but it's just about to hit the trigger to make it gong. I don't have the spring hooked up on it, we'll just see it move. Oh, I'm pushing the wrong button. Four, 5, 6. So there we go. Happy with that. Let's get the E-clip inside here, and we'll go ahead and finish putting that spring wire on. Now that we know we have this into place, let's go ahead and get our pendulum put back together. This here is still pretty tight in here. I'm still going to say that's probably a slip clutch. Should be, it looks like one. But I'm not going to force it, because what if this thing's set where it's supposed to be for me? If it's not, then I'll deal with adjusting this. So what you're going to do is see if this thing will tick and go by. Right now I can see it's already too tight. And I'm looking at right here at this. It's too tight to the gear and doesn't necessarily want to tick. Whoops. I'm telling you. Too tight or too loose here. Let's see what that does. I think just a little bit looser. I think I'm happy with that, so I'm going to go ahead and snug it up. So I need to oil there and on this side because this hasn't been oiled yet. So like I've said before, I don't know what this is for. It was a lever to do something, whether that it was to silence this or what, which I still say I don't understand silencing sometimes. But then again, some people are such light sleepers. So before I install the movement, I'm going to wax this. I don't know if that's wood or formica, but it doesn't make any difference. I'm going to try to wax this and make it look a little bit shinier or new again. And I'm going to go ahead and use the Feed and Wax, the Howard brand. Done, waxed. Now, this isn't wood. It's you could kind of tell. It almost looks like a formica. And if it is, it's really thin. Otherwise, it might be shelf paper, wood grain, because it sucks up nothing. When I started doing the inside of here with the brush, a real stiff brush, you need to just put a light coat in there so it doesn't look dry, so it matches the rest of it when it's hanging on the wall there. So anyway, this is the best I can do for it. And like I've said before, usually these are hanging on the wall. People aren't bringing their magnifying glass to look at the clock. It's the bout unusual, such as this and the man that hammers. This rod here that has a little peg on it that opens and closes the door. I'm just going to put a dab of super glue on there, put it on to where it's supposed to be, and see if that works. Going around this way, so you hit the first hole. Get it started on there. And so far I don't see us hanging up on anything in here, which is a good thing, so I didn't put it in too far. And you start turning this. As you start turning it, you turn your clock also so it rides the wheel and doesn't want to fall off and get tangled up in other gears. Be able to hit the, here it comes down. .50-50, so they both have the same weight on them, so they're not going to try to slack up on me. So this clock is a Linden. It's a Japan clock, but it does say made in Germany. A little confused, but it's a Japan company, but this is made in Germany, and it has a Cuckoo Clock Manufacturing Company movement in it. So there we have it, the unique clock that you don't often see. I will admit I have 3 of them now, or I actually don't have them now because I've given my brother one because he was in the forge thing for quite a while there, making knives, that kind of stuff, and that's why I gave it to him. And I thought it was unique and the price was right, $16. Why not? Anyway, don't forget to subscribe because it's free, and until next time, let's see what kind of clock we have to play with.